Hello humans, Master Dinnerflex here, bringing you low quality content you deserve, and today I'll be going over probably one of my first control stun based combos. Now the reason I usually don't do like combo tutorials on like control or stun decks is because control and stun decks are very dependent on what your opponent does, and usually they're not as impressive to visually look at, but they are impressive in a gameplay scenario. But what I wanted to show off is a very interesting loop that can occur with the new Lair of Darkness monster, Reckless Greed, and Lair of Darkness. Now, for this 3-card combo, your opponent needs to do some very specific actions. Not really that specific, but they need to commit a monster, and they need to not out Lair. If they do those two things, this loop happens, which may sound like, why would they ever do that? But it's a thing where, like, if they can't out the Lair, that's one thing. And when they're trying to push to out the Lair, you can just stop it. So that's usually the scenario this comes up. But what I wanted to show off is what can happen if Lair is not outed very early on with this specific combo of cards. So what you need is Lair of Darkness, Ties of the Brethren, and any level 3 Fiend, preferably Sangan, but it can be any of them. So we'll start off by activating Lair of Darkness. This is the amount of random cards in our hand, by the way. Normal summon Sangan. Activate Ties of the Brethren, pay 2,000, and then we will get Lilith at her 2k attack, and then Malice in defense, so she can't just get run over by your Lair tokens. Now we are going to activate Lilith, tributing Sangan to set Artifact Sanctum. Now this could realistically be any trap, like Back to the Front, or just anything you may need, but preferably you want it to be a trap that can get a monster on board. And Sanctum not only is a trap, but it also is a monster. So then Sangan's going to search us any random hand trap, whatever you want it to be. And then we're going to pass turn. Now, your opponent, when they go to commit a play, to play around Gamma, of course, you go ahead and sight them. So that stops their turn, and if they try to attack over Malice, you will use Lilith. And here's where the interesting part of the deck comes in. You will tribute it to get Reckless Greed. You'll reveal 3 copies. And then the end phase, your opponent gets a token. Now here's where it gets interesting. So on your draw phase, you will activate Reckless Greed to draw 2 random cards. You always activate Reckless Greed in your draw phase because it plays around Droll and Lockbird. Then afterwards, we are going to tribute this Scythe and their token, and we are going to set this Reckless Greed back. Now, we have 6 cards in our hand if you didn't use the hand trap, but if you use the hand trap, it's only these 5. Now, that's quite a bit of cards in hand, so whatever traps you drew, you just set them, and then the end phase, because we tributed 2 monsters, one of theirs and one of yours, you get 2 Lair tokens. Now, in your opponent's draw phase, let's just say we set 2 back row. 2 back row. Yeah, 2 back row. So we got this. In your opponent's draw phase, we will activate Reckless Greed. Put this to the bottom of the deck and draw 2 cards. So, we're not actually supposed to draw them. I'm just showing this off for demonstration. So now we have these random cards in hand again. And when they go to commit a play, you can just tribute their card and set the 3 Reckless Greed you have in your deck again. So now you got Reckless Greed again. And during their end phase, they will get a Lair token. On your standby phase, you will draw from Reckless Greed. So now you have drawn 6 cards. It'll go to the grave. You'll tribute one of your tokens and your opponent's token to set the Lair, the Reckless Greed. Now, tell me when you notice something strange going on. So you go ahead and do whatever. You poke for damage. So you have 7 cards in your hand, 2 back row possibly, probably more, because you're just drawing so many cards. But if you haven't noticed, this is an infinite loop. So during your end phase, you will get 2 tokens. Whenever they commit a play on your opponent's draw phase, you'll draw from Reckless Greed. So now you have drawn, let's see, 8 cards off of Reckless Greed. Off of 1 copy, by the way. It'll go to the bottom of the deck, and when they commit a play, you Lilith. Getting Reckless Greed. And then, in phase, they get a token. On your standby phase, Reckless Greed. And then it'll go to grave. You'll use a Malice, tribute their token, and one of yours. You will set Reckless Greed. And this is the loop. If this occurs, you can technically activate Reckless Greed until one of 2 things happens. You run out of deck, or you draw a copy of Reckless Greed off of one of them. But until that happens, you will infinitely draw Reckless Greeds. You will infinitely draw off Reckless Greed. You are exchanging 1 draw phase for your turn for 2 draw phases on each player's turn. Now, this is actually the reason why I like Reckless Greed in the new Lair Darkness deck post-Eternity Code. Because it allows this. Not only is Reckless Greed a really good card to help you get into Extravagance, so you can Reckless Greed into Extravagance and then the draw phases never matter, but Reckless Greed is something that's chainable to back row removal. Reckless Greed triggers Paleos if you play them, and Reckless Greed can be recycled and renewed, so you can use it multiple times just off of seeing 1 copy. And that is where it gets insane with this combo. Because this combo, while you're setting it up, you're drawing back row, you're drawing hand traps, you're drawing extenders, you're drawing power cards, while at the same time removing your opponent's stuff. So yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I hope this gave you a really interesting demonstration of how the new Lair of Darkness monster works with Lilith. So like, when Malice and Lilith are up on the board, you can actually infinitely loop 3 of traps of any kind. Not just Reckless Greed, but any kind of 3 of trap can be looped infinitely with this combo. And I thought that was really interesting. But yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. And remember, Master Dinnerflax will take your soul.